Welcome back. After I've added a bit more green stuff to help with the alignment, I'm all ready to assemble these main pieces of the hull. First thing I want to check is to make sure that everything still lines up on a dry fit. This middle deck insert piece has a notch that clicks into the board along where this cannon rail is. And just got to make sure it's slid forward as far as possible. This gap at the back here is for the furnace door, which not only has to click in as well between the two pieces, but it has to line up the pipes with two little round brass bits you can see on the deck. Have to use super glue for a resin model. Plastic glue won't actually melt or react with the resin, so plain old CA glue. It's going to go along the side of the door and the deck piece, at the back where the wheels click together, and at the front and along the hull where the two pieces meet in the middle. I had to clamp the two pieces together with my hands for about 30 seconds or so before the glue held. After that it was pretty sturdy. Then went along with the glue and did a few more dots or lines of super glue just along where all the joins are. The super glue will show up over the top of the paint a little bit. I'm going to come back and paint this as if it was pitch or tar that was used to waterproof the wood of the ship. Alrighty, the next bit that I wanted to get glued on was the wheels. If I can stand this ship up on my desk, it makes it much easier to paint. Before the big wheels go on, there are these cog and chain pieces that go in between the body and the wheel. These are, I guess, a differential, like a bike chain that takes the power from the steam boiler and uses it to turn the wheels. Just be aware that these pieces are very flimsy. The chain breaks really easily. This one's broken a couple of times and I've had to repair it with a bit of glue and green stuff. After the chains are glued on, there is enough of a nub poking out that you can connect the socket on the big wheel to. Once you've got it fitted, probably give it a bit of a twist and turn just to make sure that it's aligned the way you want it to. I've slotted in the main metal deck on top of the wheels there, and there are a couple of smaller pieces that can go on now too. You've got the chimney out the back, and then there's this little piece of mechanical something or other that sits on top of the boiler. This piece here is the gun door for where the cannon pokes out the front of the ship. This can be assembled either open or closed. Open definitely looks better. You might do it closed if you're worried about the piece breaking off, because there is a very small point of contact for it to glue on. Enough assembly for now. I'm excited to get on to painting the crew. There are 6 crew members here. We've got a helmsman, a lookout, captain, and then 3 regular marines or crew members. I've primed these guys with a zenithal spray of white over black, and then come back in with some white paint on the areas that are going to get contrast paints on top of them, just to up the vibrancy of the paints. These guys are in bright Marienburg colours, so it needs a little bit of extra hue so that I can tell these marines apart a bit easier and they look a bit more distinct from one another. I'm going to do the pants and shirts in alternating colours, but using the same 3 colours altogether. And first up out of those colours is Bad Moon Yellow, a really bright yellow contrast paint which gets a saturation that is really hard to achieve with regular paint. Next up is Talisar Blue contrast. This is exactly the tone of blue that I want as my mid-tone. However, it does dry a little bit shiny, so will need to be painted over a little bit so that it doesn't look like they're wearing satin pajamas. And my third colour choice is Doomfire Magenta, again for the saturation. It is quite pink, but it's very easy to mix this down into a more red tone. So you can see we've got 1 shirt of each colour and 1 pants of each colour. These guys are going to get a skin tone base of Cadian flesh tone. Marienburgers would normally be fairly pale, ginger types. These guys have been sailing the high seas, so especially the regular crew members are going to be more suntanned. The upper decks of the ship are lined with shields, which I've painted in my Sudenburg and Marienburg colours. Here the yellow has been given a few thin layers of Ariel yellow to get a nice base colour, and then I'm shading it with some thinned Eandan yellow contrast paint. The shield on the right has a cooler red tone from the Sudenburg colours. I'm achieving this by starting with a base of corn red, mixing in equal amounts of Evil Sun Scarlet and Wasdacker red, increasing the amounts of those in each successive layer. Wasdacker red is kind of what they call a madder red, which is like an English red coat. It's paler and less saturated without being pink. The blue next to it is Altdorf Guard Blue mixed into Cantor Blue, and adding some white to that mix for the final highlight. I've made sure there's a fairly clear dividing line where the two colours meet, just so that it's a bit more visible from a distance, and picking out the very sharp edges and the corners with the white mix for the final highlight. And finally, the remaining shield on the left, to stand out from the other blue, I've done this one in a bit of a sky blue, or a sea blue, you might say. The actual paint colour I've used is Teclis blue, and just adding white to this for the highlights, but same process as the other shields. Also picking out the prongs of the fork in the middle with blue to contrast with the yellow. Back on the yellow again, I've smoothed out the orange shading that we did with a bit more aerial yellow, just leaving a little bit of a blush of orange as it gets towards the bottom. Then highlighting this one with Flashgitz yellow, which is more of a fluoro, towards of a fluoro yellow than the aerial yellow, which is more of an orange one. Finally doing the edge highlight with Dawn yellow and a little bit of white. Finally, checking in with the crocodile on the base, I initially painted it a lighter green, and then I had another look at the photos of Nile crocodiles, and they're lighter on the bottom, getting progressively darker in a gradient as they go to the top. And most of this pattern is made up of dots, kind of like dithering in pixel art. So I turned around and started painting it back in the other direction, adding a succession of darker and darker green spots and shade to the top of the crocodile. See how that looks once it's done. Hopefully it still stands out against the colour of the river a little bit, just so you can spot it. Might have to rely on having glowing eyes or something. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll see you next time for a bit more work on the crew once I've painted all these shields and got the top components stuck together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.